And welcome back to Masters of Modern. I'm your host, Alex Kessler, here with my co-host, Michael Grothman.
Hi.
I realized that.
I'm here co-hosting. So for those of you who are not watching live, Ben is currently watching Star Wars, and that's why I'm here instead of him. So we're both a little jealous, but you guys are going to get a great show from us.
And honestly, I feel like you have a perspective as far as the three hosts that do this on today's subject matter that's probably better than Ben's.
Somewhat, yeah.
So, suck it, Ben.
I mean, everybody's
Nerd
opinion
versus
matters here,
Star
right?
Wars.
Because, I mean, we'll get into it once we talk about the topic, but this is a topic that really affects nearly every type of Magic player, right?
Yeah.
It's like any Magic player who strives to play outside of their LGS, right? And so I think that, like, Ben would have a unique perspective compared to the two of us based on the way that he likes to enjoy Magic.
Yeah. But so people don't know, today we're talking about kind of what's been happening with paper tournament play, where SCG and Channel Fireball and Wizards and up to and onwards, even maybe Cascade Games or whoever does the stuff. Who does the Gen Con tournament series? I believe they did Chicago CommandFest.
Yes. So they used to run a lot of tournaments. They are pastimes.
So like there's a bunch of different TOs out there, and Wizards is also doing this whole focus on digital. So there's definitely a really interesting conversation on like what is the future of all this that we're going to get into. Other things, we are doing Twitch streams. So there's a new content release schedule. Every week we release a hot take every Monday, live stream that you're currently watching if you're watching this right now, on every Tuesday at 1. The audio episode comes out every Wednesday on podcast apps near you. Thursdays, we release the actual episode edited with card art and special effects and editing and fun stuff. We also will release the live stream, gets unlisted, but if you are a patron, you get access to it on Tuesdays. So you get all of this unfiltered, unedited content with all of the jokes that we think are bad, so we don't want them in the regular video.
Or like segments that we cut to become a hot take now or future, or the pre-show where we get all the mics working, but we also are talking and making jokes. And
yeah, so you get all of that content on patreon.com. And then over the weekend, we start streaming. So I started a streaming channel on Twitch. That is at it's twitch.tv/Kesco. Twitch.tv/TheMMCast is where we Twitch stream this live. But also, if you're a YouTube subscriber, YouTube there. For all the people YouTube subscribing or watching right now, hit the like button. It makes all of these things do that much better. I want to talk about, there was Pioneer bannings.
Yep.
And also an announcement in regards to how bannings are going to happen. They've gained Flash. People can the Wizards can just cast them at any time they want, just pulling the trigger.
They have to have priority, and apparently they only have priority on Mondays.
Yes, yeah, that's when priority is passed to Wizards. So basically, the announcement was that, you know, for my whole life, Wizards, or Magic's whole life at least, Wizards has banned cards on very specific dates that are set in a schedule throughout the year. There have only been 4 emergency bannings.
Yeah, for most of Magic's history, they would do it right after set came out. They would ban maybe some older cards. Mm-hmm. Then the Pro Tour would be like right after that. So the set would come out, they do some bannings, Pro Tour. Then recently the Pro Tour went farther out, and a lot of times after the Pro Tour they would want to ban something right away because it was like right in between set releases, like kind of even distribution between set releases. So they would do like set release ban, Pro Tour ban, and the next set release ban.
Yeah. And part of that was that they realized that the Pro Tour is the best tool that they had available to them to break the format.
Right. Especially when there's even more time after a set release for like everything to shake out. Because it's interesting, like a lot of the time you see, you know, like a weird Pro Tour deck that like breaks out and is really good. Mm-hmm. And then like everybody just figures out how to beat it, and it's not actually broken, but something else might be broken. So,
and like a good example is like Eldrazi Winter, right? Where and that's I think actually what caused this change is that Eldrazi, there was a banning before what happened, which I think is the one that they banned Gitaxian Probe and something else. And then Pro Tour happens. Eldrazi is the best deck in the room, and then the next ban announcement wasn't until the following set. So they had an entire season where they just couldn't do anything. And it ended up becoming like 90%. I think it was 60% of the format.
Right. It was because the Pro Tour was like right after the set came out that they like
printed
that
those
was
cards.
when this big deck broke out, and they had to wait all the way until the next set release to make a ban. So,
which was Shadows of Innistrad? Yes. Yeah.
And like an example of a deck from that era also was like Temur Emerge. There were like 3 copies in the top 8 or something, and it won the tournament.
Mm-hmm.
And then it just kind of saw no play after the Pro Tour. Everybody just figured out how to beat it. Now, Emrakul still had to get banned. But Temur Emerge wasn't the best shell for it.
Yeah. And
that was Eldritch Moon standard.
And standard normally has less bannings until very recently. And part of that is just that because new sets come out and it's such a smart card pool, those cards have such a significant effect on the format that normally it rotates what's powerful pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And even with Pro Tours, especially, like, what's good for that Pro Tour, it has more of a chance of being like a dark horse that just no one was expecting than in Modern, where it's more of a, this deck now exists and is powerful enough to do these things. It's probably good enough.
Yeah.
But Wizards has now been in a situation for the last kind of 6 weeks that with Pioneer, they've been trying out what happens if you ban a card every week. And then on top of that, they've had to do an emergency ban, right? Between like multiple times this year, there were moments that like an emergency ban would have been something that kind of was called for that either didn't happen or should have happened. And that was with,
there were like 2 big standard tournaments in a row. There was like a traditional Mythic Championship and then an Arena Mythic Championship, I think, with no ban window in between them. Because Mythic Championships kind of like screwed up the whole ban schedule because they weren't happening like on a 4 per year tied to a set release schedule. And so like we had 2 tournaments, 2 of basically Pro Tour level tournaments where Oko was legal. And it kind of was really lame. So yeah, what they're doing now is any Monday, they can make a ban.
Yeah. And and they have said that they will announce leading up to those moments
which is what they did with Oko. They were like, hey, we're going to make a ban and restricted announcement on this date, everyone. Mark your calendar. Not going to tell you what it is. Wink.
And so that's kind of what we're looking at. And I think I honestly think it's a great idea. I think in general, it makes it so like, yes, there's going to be situations where people have a deck ready to go. They're going to jam this deck in the GP. They practice with it, and then the card gets banned right before that weekend, and they get wrecked. But I would argue the amount of people that happens to is going to be less problematic than the tournament unattendance during these lame duck formats where, like, for instance, we all knew Hogak was going to be banned. And there was an entire Modern GP Vegas happened with Hogak getting banned Monday, but there was a Modern GP during that weekend. And everyone was just like, well, I guess I'm playing Hogak.
Right. Yeah. And one of the things they said in their announcement was that, like, one of the reasons they wanted to do this is because they were concerned about that feature where, like, you spend a bunch of money on a deck, you play in a tournament, or you're about to play in a tournament, you're, like, testing the weekend before, and then the Monday before the tournament, your deck gets banned, and now, like, maybe you have to, like, cancel flights and, you know, or build a new deck, but that's expensive, or, like, borrow cards and play something you're not familiar with, and it's just a really bad experience in general. But they were saying that, yes, that is something that's probably going to happen, and it's going to suck. But they were noticing the attendance on formats right before a ban was awful. Like right before they banned Hogak in Modern tournaments were very poorly attended. And right before they made standard bans, standard tournaments were really poor attended. Like right before the Golos or the Field of the Dead ban, standard tournaments were poorly attended, and then attendance went up after the ban. And then same with Oko. So, you know, now I think like bans are happening consistently enough that we're still kind of seeing a dip in standard attendance. Right. But also like the holidays and everything. So Oklahoma City last weekend was very low. We'll see how Portland does this weekend, and Ben will be there. Yeah. And that kind of segues. I guess the last piece before we segue into tournaments in general is what was banned, right? So they banned Oko and Pioneer, and they banned Nexus of Fate. And my hot take tweet in regards to it was basically like, I feel like the entire world was under the consideration that both of these cards were mistakes to print in the first place in general. Like Oko, obviously mistakes to print doesn't mean that they shouldn't have done it. It's good that they're testing power levels. It's cool that they try to do new and different things. But like Nexus of Fate was on the edge of being banned through its entire run in Standard, and Oko... And to be totally honest, if it was in this version of Standard that we're in now, I think it might have even been banned a little bit more thoroughly than it was. And Oko...
is being banned in every format. They probably are going to ban it in Modern. It was like 60% of the field at the last SCG event. I can imagine it eventually going away. And the question is, when do they want to ban Modern cards? But yeah, I think both of these are cards that like aren't surprising to be gone out of Pioneer.
Yeah, no, I mean, I don't think anybody's really surprised. Nexus, I think, was the best deck, and it's like very difficult to interact with unless you like have counter spells, and even then, they just have so much mana that your counter spells are not that effective.
And to be honest, I think Nexus of Fate. What's one interesting thing about Pioneer bans is that Historic is this weird bastardized format that exists on Arena. So right now, Nexus of Fate is legal in Arena, in Historic, and
they didn't suspend it.
No, I believe it's just legal there. Now, I might be wrong.
You don't get to play with Dig Through Time, so it is the Nexus deck is worse in Historic. But yeah, I mean, I think that when Historic came out, every card that had been banned in Standard should have just been banned. I mean, like, I get that maybe they're trying to do a little bit of a Pioneer thing with it, but it's so similar to Standard that it was just like so obvious that Nexus of Fate, Golos with Field of the Dead, Oko Food were just going to be like the best decks by such a wide margin because those were all like ban-worthy decks in Standard, and this is like Standard plus like 2 sets.
Right, and it's not like those cards are like in different colors. Like I could understand if like last year the best deck was black-red and this year it's blue-green, but they're all just like green-based ramp decks.
Oko was suspended in Historic, so they made like this suspended announcement.
But it was Nexus of Fate hasn't been suspended is the thing. I would imagine it's going to be.
Thank you, Duress on YouTube, for reminding us.
But yeah, so that's kind of what happened. I don't think anyone's surprised. Were you surprised?
Yeah, I mean, like, so one thing, because Wizards is banning everything so often, people are like just kind of getting used to things getting banned. And one like consequence of that is like when a deck is kind of like the best deck in the format, everybody is like, well, when is it getting banned, right?
Yes.
And like the kind of natural metagaming that typically happens in Magic, where it's like, oh, well, like mono red with Hazoret is the best deck. How do we beat it? Oh, we got to play, Vraska's Contempt to beat it. Now I'm playing blue black control with 4 of these, and then maybe that deck gets beaten by a different, whatever. And so to answer T Wisher on YouTube, who says, I wish they would just ban stuff like Hogak Oko as soon as possible when they are oppressive every month with cards that are obviously not going to stay as too much. So like Hogak and Hogak in particular, I think it was like pretty obvious right away, and that probably would have been subject to one of these bans like they're going to do now, where like just on a random Monday they're going to get rid of Hogak. But something like Oko, like it is oppressive, and obviously having a +1 that like blanks your opponent's cards is lame, and having food to extend the game is also lame, especially when in conjunction with the other thing. But I don't think that Oko was like extremely obviously needs to get banned in every format right away. It became pretty obvious in Standard kind of quickly, but not really until Golos got banned.
Right.
Or Field of the Dead got banned. And then it was like pretty obvious after that, but they were kind of tied up by their ban windows at that point. And then like Oko getting banned in Pioneer, I don't think was like a foregone conclusion. I mean, this is a format where you can play Treasure Cruise and Dig Through Time still. It wasn't even the first card to get banned because they had to ban they banned Smuggler's Copter and Once Upon a Time and Nissa, and
this is not banned.
Not Nissa, Oath of Nissa is what I was thinking. Oko seemed like he might be fine in Pioneer. And I think it's fine to like kind of let natural metagame forces kind of act on Oko. You get to play Dreadbore in that format. You get to play other Planeswalker removal that doesn't necessarily care about Oko's loyalty. And so I don't... Not to mention like the other powerful things you can do in the format, like Nexus of Fate.
Right.
That like the Nexus of Fate deck doesn't care about Oko at all. Oko is just a blank card against Nexus of Fate.
And I would say that Nexus of Fate was more on. I think Oko is just now on everyone's list that just like
it sucks to play.
It sucks to play against, and like they're banning it in every other format. So why do we have to deal with it in the format it's not banned in? Like in Modern, I think it should just be banned. I think just rip the Band-Aid off. Like,
I think that like. Give it a little bit of time,
Well, they will, yeah. I mean,
and they did. I think that like they gave Oko a chance in Pioneer, and we saw where that got us. They're now giving it a chance in Modern, and we're going to see where that gets us. But I don't think that I don't think you want to be too quick with the banhammer, right? Because like they designed these cards for a reason, because they do think that they're like interesting, and I want to kind of let every card get a chance to get explored by the player base before you ban it. And some cards like Hogak are just like, this isn't particularly interesting, and it just like is obviously too powerful.
I think after the second It was whatever they were now, but Mythic Championship and then a GP, like one after the other.
Yeah.
It just was the entire format. That's the moment they should have banned it, but because of the windows of how they were doing stuff, it didn't work. I think that I think Nexus of Fate was the thing that everyone was kind of expecting coming into this. It was like a deck that was pretty oppressive, and then Oko was. Both of them have problems, and I'm not sad to really see either of them go.
Yeah.
I did buy a Nexus of Fate for $20, and now it's not that. At CommandFest DC, which is not the first time that's happened to me.
So, speaking of CommandFest DC, how was your CommandFest DC experience?
CommandFest DC was awesome. I think it's really interesting on a perspective of what a Magic event can be at that doesn't have a Magic event at it. Everyone there is really awesome. I mean, Star City Games did a really good job for how quick this was kind of put together. There's definitely things that I would like to change. For those who don't know what a CommandFest is, basically this year, Wizards has kind of made the commitment that Commander is the most played format in Magic. And what they've done is In paper. And what they've decided is to really start focusing on it. And the first step of that was doing the command zones. And the first one was at Vegas. And it was a huge success. And
what's the command zone?
The command zone is a designated area at a Magic Fest for playing Commander. And that's it.
Yep, and you could pay to get a badge to play all weekend, or you could get a one-day badge. It came with a foil Soul Ring.
Yep, I think foil Soul Ring comes with the 3-day badge, but regular Soul Ring comes with...
It was like a...
Same promo, not foiled out, is the single day.
GP promo, looks cool.
Yep.
Unique art that you can only get at at Command Zones.
And CommandFest.
And CommandFest, and it's from the original artist of Soul Ring, which is cute. I mean, it's a very different style. It's like a more modern Magic style, but it's still Mark Tadine, which is
right. And it is... And so you get a badge, you get to hang out with all your friends, you get to play Commander. Because this was a response to literally Magic Fest Los Angeles. It's been interesting. I've been to like the evolution of command zones happening. Where at Magic Fest Los Angeles, they had, I want to say, well, I don't have a percentage, a very significant portion of the Commander content creating community, including Shivam, Olivia, Jimmy was not there because he was filming Mulan, but Josh was there
because a lot of the people you're mentioning are all California based.
Yes,
except Olivia is in Nevada, which is California.
But we were all in the food court in the LAX Convention Center because we kept getting kicked out of tables because there wasn't a place to play Commander, and when you had that large amount of people with a voice in the community, they let that voice be heard, and kind of through that, Wizards realized there needs to be some kind of answer to this. And so then at Seattle, that still wasn't happening. So at Vegas was the first one, right? That was the first.
Vegas was the first command zone. Yeah.
So at Vegas, they just started this whole kind of event thing where they had a designated space and was very successful. And then the next step of that was they announced CommandFest, which are basically Magic Fests if everything but the command zone was pulled out. So you get the promo, you get the Soul Ring promo, there's a designated area, you get the badge.
So, I mean, already Magic Fests are a little bit of like becoming more than a tournament, right? Mm-hmm. Because you have at least one big tournament. You got, a lot of times you'll have panels, at least at the big ones, the ones that have command zones. Mm-hmm. You got a command zone now, you got artists, you got vendors. So of that stuff, what was at the Command Fest? I didn't go to the Command Fest. I'm not just like playing the straight man here. I didn't go. So I'm curious about what's at a Command Fest. Because I've been to a bunch of Magic Fests and I've seen that like some of them maybe don't have panels, or some of them have fewer vendors or fewer artists, or maybe they have like one panel. Right. But you know, what was there? And
there is a grain of salt with this, because even talking with people that were running the event at Command Fest, they announced these within like a 3-month advance period. So there was a lot of rushing to make them happen, and they are kind of aware of what needs to be added. But this event had kind of two main sections. There was the free play area that had big signs that were like Oathbreaker, Commander, competitive EDH, like Brawl, like the different versions of playing Commander that are available.
So you say free play section, but you had to pay for a badge to get into the event.
So,
right?
So the biggest difference between this and a Commander, a GP or a Magic Fest is you cannot enter the venue without being a paid participant of the event.
which is different from Magic Fest. Magic Fest, you can typically walk in, you can browse vendors, you can, get some stuff signed by artists, you can hang out with your friends at an empty table as long as you don't get kicked out by judges who want to run a side event. Like, there's some stuff you can do for free. You could go to the panels for free.
Right.
Like, a lot of it was free.
And
but
so
not so at a CommandFest.
Right. And I think there's benefits and strengths to that. I think benefits and strengths.
I knew what you meant.
Benefits and weaknesses.
I speak Alex Kesslerese.
Yeah, but to the listeners of this podcast, yeah, they do. I love you guys. Thanks for dealing with me.
We're on episode like 220
We're like close to 50. We're 246, I think.
Everybody speaks Alex Kesslerese at this point.
And so you have to pay to enter, and so there's free play area for all the people that want to do that. There's also events. So by entering, you get, I think I got 3 tickets. I don't know what you get if you just do a day pass. It might be like an event per day, which are more kind of not hosted, I guess. Like the tournament organizer organized the play group that you play with in your pod of Commander. You play each other. You earn tickets like a normal Magic Fest side event, and then you can redeem those tickets to get prizes that are cool, from card sheets to.
So they had side events. Was it only Commander side events, or could you play any other format?
You couldn't play any other format.
Interesting.
So
what's the structure of the Commander side event? So there's a few ways to run Commander side events at GPs, and I'm interested in the way that they chose to do it.
So
or
this is me
Magic
speaking
Fest.
as a person who did not do any of them, so I can't attest too strongly.
You didn't use your tickets?
I gave them to people.
Oh, wow, what a guy.
I wasn't going to play in them. My understanding is that you sign up, they then, once they have a full pod, will call people to then sit at a table that they designate, you play each other, and then the winner of that pod gets tickets.
Winner takes all? That's savage.
I think it is winner takes all.
So I think the best way to run it at a Magic Fest is you have a certain number of prize tickets, and you give them to the players, and you say, you guys can agree on how to distribute these.
Okay.
It has its weaknesses because a lot of times people won't agree, or people will be afraid to speak up if they want to do a more even split. But Commander can be played many ways, and I do think that competitive Commander appeals to some people, but I think that competitive Commander does not appeal to other people, which is the reason you gave your tickets away. So.
And I do believe that
you
they
could split
were
evenly, right? So you would do like a number divisible by 4.
They distributed 50 to each player in the casual queues at the start of each round. So I do think that because you could join a competitive EDH or a casual EDH designated group.
Oh, and you got a Gold Rush Legendary Creature bonus pack, which I don't know what any of those words mean, but it sounds cool.
So the Gold Rush competitor packs, these are cool. You get one for joining, and then you get them for playing. You get these envelopes, and in that envelope is a random legendary creature.
Okay.
And they range everywhere from precons to Portal 3 Kingdoms to whatever. I believe actually that Ian got a $70 in his Portal 3 Kingdoms.
Wow, that's nice.
One. It's the white one that has horsemanship.
Wow, that's pretty nice. Didn't get like a Sir Alan of the Claw or something?
I got the Blinky Rhino.
A Rune of the Hidden Realm?
Yeah, Rune of the Hidden Realm.
Ooh, somebody got Hazazen Tamar. Oh, that's a Legends one. That's what Ian got, apparently. He got Hazazen Tamar, who is a Legends legend, and like many Legends, is on the reserve list and is very expensive.
Got it. There you go.
He's the one that makes the Sand Warriors on your upkeep.
Got it. I think he got both. Well,
I don't know.
There was the thing where all of the community people that were there got them, but didn't know what to do with them. So they put them all in the middle of a circle and bet, and then everyone just rolled dice, and whoever had the highest roll of like 8 dice got all of them.
Wow.
And I forget who won, but I remember the dollar total was like $350. It was actually, and all of us thought it was just like trash cards in these envelopes. At this point, we didn't realize that they were actual value, and so congrats. There's a really good picture on Twitter right now. You can see
he said he got and a P3K guy and a Sliver Hive Lord. So yeah, his 3 packs sound like they were all amazing.
Yep.
And Rune of the Hidden Realm is really a chump compared to all those.
I know. Well, that's why I thought they were trash, right? I got like a random bulk command or
it's
precon.
probably like $4 or something.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, okay, this is cute. You get like a cool commander. You could like build something off of this. It's like a fun thing. And then the party happens. They do that betting on the floor. I'm like, oh, no. They put real value in these envelopes. So that was really cool and very magic-y. So that's what happens when you play in the regular ones. And then the other thing is all of the community members that they invited have these big signs that they get to like plant on their table.
Did you get one?
I did not get one. I know. Next time, maybe. Jeremy Noel, if you're watching this, I want a sign. But basically, you have a sign that says your name on it, and people get to hang out and sit next to you and challenge you. Luckily, I was generally playing with people that did have signs. I also think those signs...
Who you know, right? It's not about having the sign. It's who you know who's got a sign.
And then... So I got to play a lot of games. Going back to kind of the point of the paid or unpaid feature of it. I think to be totally honest, I've been pretty on board for a while that maybe just Magic Fests should have that. Like you can't enter without paying. Now that could be like $30 and it comes with a free event ticket, right? Or which this does in many ways. But I think from a security perspective, from a making them feel more like a con and providing more funds to be able to do stuff with perspective, it makes sense to me.
I mean, I assume that this is still ongoing because I haven't seen any news otherwise, but we've talked about it on the podcast. There are a bunch of Magic artists who are boycotting Magic Fests. Basically, Channel Fireball has a big list of artists, and every time they have a Magic Fest, they send out a big email to all of them, and they're like, hey, if you want to participate, let us know. And a lot of the Magic artists are just boycotting because they feel like that's not the way to do this. You should pick out artists and you should invite them and they should be treated like special guests. And they were not being treated like special guests. They were paying for their space. They were basically being treated like vendors. But they don't go to these things to make money. They make money making artwork, right? Like if you're going to invite them to your convention, you should treat them like any other convention would treat them. So that's one thing that they would be able to do with funds from badges. I also am in favor of paid badges for Magic Fests. I mean, a lot of people travel to go to them, so it's not like an extra $30 is going to break the bank, especially not if it comes with some prize tickets or event tickets or, a CommandFest Command Zone 1 day package. I mean, that's the thing is I think that you would want to sell them in packages, right? Sure. You'd be and they already do this, but you'd do here's the Commander package, here's the limited side event package, here's the main event package, here's the, the I Love Artists package or whatever. And each of those would entitle you to certain benefits that come with your badge. And they could be different prices. Obviously, main events are super pricey now. But I also think that main events would get cheaper if they did these badges. Right. Because the funds just to set up the whole event, pay all the staff, pay all the judges, get the space, that would all be subsidized by badges. And so main event prices wouldn't be $70 for constructed, right? I mean, if you want to play in a standard or a modern GP, that's the right word, actually. You are paying $60 or $70 most of the time and you get nothing, right? If you are unlucky or you didn't sleep well the night before or whatever, and you go 2 and 3, you get nothing for your $70, right? And that feels really bad. It already feels bad to lose in a GP. When you paid $70, it feels a lot worse. Right. And now the $70 you spent, you're going to go spend money on side events. You're going to go spend money on food, hotel, everything, right? To be at this Magic Fest. And it just becomes super expensive. And you went 2 and 3.
Yeah. And by doing that, you getting entry, making that cheaper, makes it so you participating in the rest of the event feels a little bit more significant. Right? Yeah. It's not just, oh, I went to a GP, I lost, I just kind of blew $70 in 5 hours. It's oh no, I did that and now I'm going to participate in all the other things around this call and I'm going to enjoy it more. Right.
I mean, already they've kind of turned Magic Fests into Magic conventions, and that's why they rebranded to call them Magic Fests, because they had already been Magic conventions. And I think that there's a few more steps they need to take to kind of really embrace being a convention. But what's interesting about Magic Fest becoming Magic conventions is now these Command Fests.
Right. Well, and so the other thing that because we went to the larger subject, the smaller subject matter of having to pay for it, I do think actually what's really interesting is I think this is the most family friendly Magic convention-esque event that exists.
What do you say?
And I think it could be more than, and I think they should lean into it. But because it's a casual multiplayer-based format, you don't have... If I'm bringing my kid with me, I don't have a kid, but my imaginary child, your niece and nephew that I know you have, to the event, to a big event, most of that gameplay until very recently was tournament play. And you can't really do that with a family or kids because unless they're playing in that same event, and unless it's more 8-pod drafts, you'll be separated in some ways. Yeah. They'll just have to deal with one stranger the whole time, or you'll play each other, which is also miserable because playing your friend in a tournament you both paid for is always a lose-lose. But at a Command Fest, you can just play with your family at the casual tables or have 2 tables next to each other where you're playing and then your wife and your other kid are playing or whatever.
And if you want to split up, like if you have like if you want a little time away from your parents, you can sign up for on-demand queues. It sounds like you get tickets for entering. So,
and
like I've been 12. I don't want to hang out with my Magic playing nerd dad all day.
Correct. Well, and it's because it's a closed event, because you can't just walk in. It is a safer event. Like just inherently, people can't just walk in off the street that aren't Magic people or whatever.
Or people with ill intent, obviously there's some barriers for them. Yeah.
Like if I'm going to go steal something, I have to now pay $100 just for that opportunity.
Right.
Which means that I have to be better at stealing. The take I have to take is much higher.
Yeah. I mean, if you're stealing, typically it's like, you're making the calculation of risk versus reward, and you're risking a lot more if you have to upfront pay $30 to get in the door, right?
So I do think just as in general, this creates an opportunity for creating very family friendly and kid friendly events, and that kind of segues into a little bit on, well, I guess final things. They did have vendors. There was an artist section. It was limited compared to like Magic Fest Vegas and Seattle.
Last minute they put it together, though, right? Because they only announced this like 3 months ago, right?
It was pretty comparable to some Magic Fests Los Angeles that I've been to, where like, especially not the one in spring because that was a modern one that was much more supported, but a year ago fall, there was a Magic Fest
like a standard
LA
that nobody wanted to
Correct.
play.
It was a lame duck standard.
It was like Teamer Energy standard.
Mm-hmm. And so like
times.
So no one was there.
I didn't play in the main event. I typically play in the main event in LA because I like to play competitive Magic, and I'll borrow a deck if I have to, but I did not want to play Teamer Energy Standard. I just played side events.
Yeah, same. Well, we threw, that was the first time we threw like an after party, which
Yeah.
was really good. And I think that was the highlight for a lot of people because there was actually nothing else going on.
Oh, I should put my phone on silent.
But it was kind of comparable to that in size. And part of that is because the last minute, they had vendors. They had like 6 vendors. Obviously SEG is a different vending experience in my experience than Channel Fireball ones or other ones, because they are the vendor more often than not. And
Channel Fireball vends at their own events.
that's true. I guess
were there fewer vendors than you would find at a Magic Fest?
I don't know, because
Got it.
It felt comparable. Yes, there were less than normal, but I don't know where that line is between.
And again, that's like,
Last minute
vendors are planning their year pretty far in advance, right? To make sure that they have budget and staff and everything else. And so if it's a last minute event, some people might just not be interested or not want to make it, especially a couple weeks before the holidays.
And so that kind of also gets into what more could happen and also some of the issues. One issue I know, and this is more after Seattle and Chicago, kind of rumors on the street, is this is not the best event for vendors. And part of that is actually something that people don't, I think, realize. Vendors don't generally go, some do, but most of them aren't going to these events from the perspective of selling cards.
That's true.
They're going to buy cards.
Having been to these things as a vendor, yes.
This is often a Grand Prix or Magic Fest event is the main source of supply for a lot of these retailers, either online or at their local, if you're a local game store. And so Commander players apparently don't sell cards very often or as much. I mean, you would even say that we talked about this earlier today, that you don't have any standard bulk because you
also
kind
of the lack of draft side events matters too, right?
Yeah.
I mean, like when you're running on-demand chaos drafts, people are just opening like random gas that you can buy, right? It's like somebody opened a foil Elish Norn out of their Modern Masters 2-pack, and you can snap that right up because they're like, I'm never going to use this. I play standard, right? Like,
and so there's less people selling, and also the cadence of a GP doesn't exist because there's not rounds that have set times. It's like harder for the like people that are working the events because they don't have like set times where it's easier to step away from the table and like go use the bathroom, or they need to be overstaffed or they need to be staffed. So that's more of like a learning lesson, right? It's just knowing how to staff correctly.
People playing in these events aren't selling cards between rounds because it usually takes a while. That's something you're usually doing once you like scrub out or whatever.
Sure.
But there are more people browsing in between rounds for sure. And a lot of times people will be browsing, they'll see something they want and they'll buy it, and then they'll go to play their round. Right? That does happen.
That's more the shopping side. On the sales side, it's just that doesn't exist. The other issue is that, and this is the opposite side of the I'm a vendor, not the opposite side of paying entry problem is now these events are not, unless you're already just going to be there, you're not going to sell cards.
Right. You're not going, like, there are people who go to Magic Fest for the express purpose of selling cards.
Correct.
They're like, I've been collecting for a long time. I know that this is a really competitive environment where I can get a lot of quotes on my collection. So I'm going to show up and I'm going to sell my collection. That's what I'm going to do because I'm selling out of Magic. But if you had to pay $30 to do that, it'd be a lot less attractive. You might just sell them all online to SCG or whatever, right? So yeah, that makes sense. And that's also true for like buying cards as well. Like if you are just going to shop, which basically there's like a Magic the Gathering mall that parks at these things. Right?
Yeah, no,
I mean, maybe
literally.
not at the Command Fest, but at Magic Fest there's just tons of different shops selling tons of different stuff. And if you just want to go to shop, $30 is a big barrier.
Right.
That's $30 on top of whatever you were going to buy. Maybe it's better to just buy online.
Right. And
or at your LGS.
And that comes down to like almost it's when does the shipping cost supersede $30 and how much you're going to buy.
Sure.
But yeah, and then on the selling side, that's pretty easy. The other
That's what's challenging, right? Is it's like, how many people that are in that room do you lose? And then how many vendors are making less money and they decide it's not worth it. So then you lose vendors and that's losing value from your event. Even if you're making it up in terms of like fees from people just coming to play casual Commander, yeah, you have to like
balance what that is. And that's specifically for vendors. And some of that's learning lessons. Like I also know that it was much better at DC, but for Seattle and Chicago. So for those who don't, there's been 3 Command Fest. There was one the beginning of November on the same weekend in Chicago and in Seattle, and then this was the last one of the year in DC. And
these are scheduled for next year as well, right?
We do not have scheduled events,
but we know they're happening.
Rumors are they're happening.
Oh, okay. I thought that it had been announced somewhere.
People I talked to at the event, judges I've talked to, there's like we haven't figured out what the plan is yet. And partially I think it's because they wanted to I think literally right now in whoever organizes these things offices, they're having this conversation as well, being like, this happened, what worked, what didn't work, what do we want to do differently? Even Gavin Verhey tweeted on Monday, and a lot of what we're going to be talking about comes from this thread asking just like for people that were there, what were things that they thought? And that was very intentionally to get feedback so that they, when they have these meetings, know what they're talking about.
Yeah, Gavin loves to get feedback on stuff. So
Wizards does. I mean, that's kind of where Rosewater started with all of the social media usage. Is he wanted to get a better
he wanted to answer questions.
Know what people want. And so there's a reason I read every single comment on every video we post. Feedback is great. Comment. Something that Ian brought up in the Twitch feed is also with the cadence difference, there's all benefits in the sense that instead of you can kind of lose time, like you can just like I definitely day one started a game at 11 being like, okay, I'll play like a few games and then get lunch, and then I looked at my clock and it was 4 p.m. And I was like, oh, I haven't eaten food today.
Yeah, that's true.
And so because there's no event cycle, you just kind of just jam games.
Yeah.
And it is great not having, there was an announcer over the intercom being like, we need one more person for our 4-man pod of competitive Commander. But there wasn't the like, every 30 seconds, some announcer telling you
of every round, every single side event for every single format. And then,
which like, gets kind of into the next conversation. But that was great. Like not having that announcer just shouting at you all the time, and gets me to the next point of like things that they should add. And the first one of that is something that wasn't there. And this was due to the time and schedule. But what was very successful in Seattle, and I'm semi-biased because I participated in both of these, and was very successful, and even maybe more successful in Vegas, was content panels. Mm-hmm. And there wasn't time to have those happen. I reached out to SEG and they were like, yeah, we had like 3 weeks to make this happen. Everything that's here is at the skin of our teeth. But
it's interesting because like I think that one thing that's relatively unique about the Command Zone and Command Fests is like, well, not unique because this was true of Magic Fest before them, but it gives you a very easy way to hang out with content creators that you know. Mm-hmm. And so like at a Magic Fest pre-Command Zone, like you said, a lot of the times the content creators would be like playing like pros, obviously, or like more competitive minded content creators are playing main events, and you can't talk to them very easily, right? You can be like, hey, autograph my mat. Okay, bye, see ya. And at like Magic Fest Vegas, for example, there was no place for casual content creators to hang out. So they were just sitting in the food court, which is like
Magic Fest LA.
Yeah. What did I say?
Seattle.
LA. And like, you don't want people to be outside your convention hanging out. You want them to be inside where they're more likely to sign up for side events and buy stuff from vendors and talk to artists and, whatever. So Yeah. These Command Fest being a way to like hang out with content creators that means that all the content creators are there. They're like hanging out with fans. You could just put them on a stage.
Yep. and it's successful. I mean, like, Tappy has done the match game at both Seattle and Vegas, and like had huge crowds. We did a live Masters of Modern episode in Seattle, which I think you can listen to. I think that we got the recording of.
Oh, that's nice. We didn't get the other recording.
And then in Vegas, we did the trivia show, which was like maybe one of the cooler things we've ever done as a podcast.
Yeah, that was really fun.
And that doesn't exist. That's gone to the void. But maybe we'll come back. Like pointing at the camera. So we live, there's just, and there's other content creators, me and BDM, we're talking about doing kind of like how to rank your commander deck. Cause that's a big kind of conversation going on in the commander community right now is, power level matching. Like I go to a table, am I playing competitive, casual, super competitive? Is the kid that I'm playing against playing with the pre-con? There's a huge range, and what are ways to kind of accomplish that? And I have my ideas.
That's just like always going to be a struggle, but like do something about it, I guess, is where you're at.
We have a panel about it. At CommandFest DC, Olivia Guberhicks and creator of Commander,
Sheldon
Menery did a roundtable where people kind of, and there was other people, someone from Wizards was there as well, did a roundtable with people nearby, just kind of talking about what they're doing
an
in
impromptu
Commander.
Panel?
Correct. They did an impromptu panel. But that would have been just a regular panel, right? So there's definitely an opportunity to do kind of that activity.
Like Sheldon has been going to a ton of events lately, and now with the invention of the Commander Advisory Group,
I think so.
Now with the Commander Advisory Group, there's like a much wider range of people who are like involved at least in making decisions about the format, and so having those people on a panel, there's enough of them that you can always get a few of them to do a Q&A, right? And for Commander in particular. Now for Modern, it's like a much smaller group, and they all live in Seattle. Not much smaller. It's like, not small, I guess. There's a lot of Wizards R&D people, but they all are centralized in Seattle. So it's hard to get them to fly around the country to go to these things. Whereas these content creators are content creators. They're going around having fun, promoting their content because they love Magic, and it's, it's easier to get them to do Q&A.
Well, I think panels just in general are much more possible because the wider content creation groups of Magic is much larger than it used to be, right? There was a while where basically you were a Wizards employee or a professional Magic player. And those were the main two promoted groups. Now you have YouTubers, Twitch streamers, professional Magic players, both rivals and
podcasters. Don't forget podcasters.
Podcasters, YouTubers, cosplayers, the Commander committee people,
fan artists,
artists in general. Like that's a list of people that you could schedule multiple panels with. Like every YouTuber could have their own show almost.
Pretty much.
And that I think is a huge resource to make something really exciting at Magic Fest and Command Fest. I will say that more than any time before, I had more people come up to me saying this was their very first Magic event outside of an LGS. That this was the thing that they were like excited about because it was more designated towards the type of Magic that they play. Even though Commandos exist and Magic Fest are doing their rebranding around making GPs more of a big festival-esque event, there was a significantly larger group of people excited to come to this event because it was closed door or casually focused or commander focused than really ever than generally they are.
Sure.
And it's not like they hadn't had an opportunity to go to a GP. This was the thing that they were excited about.
Yeah. What's also interesting is that like Channel Fireball has all Magic Fests, right? But all these were run by other tournament organizers, right?
But one was CFB, one was, I think, Pastime, Chicago, and then one was...
It makes sense. That's the region that Pastimes operates in.
And then one Midwest. Was SGG. And so those, like, Pastime is who does Gen Con. So they're the ones that run Magic events at other conventions.
And they used to run GPs.
And
Star City used to run GPs too.
Yeah.
One of my favorite mats is from a Star City GP.
Orlando?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. They made Disneyland, but Magic, and it's really good.
Yeah, now I always use my Gen Con mat because it has special significance to me. But my favorite, from the looks of a mat, that Orlando mat is my favorite. It's from an SCG GP. And it's funny because it's not Ultra Pro licensed and it's not like Magic Art licensed. It's like they made their own art and like put it on a mat and like had another company do it. So it's like different from all my other Magic Fest mats, which are mostly Channel Fireball ones.
Right.
Because I live on the West Coast. And even before Channel Fireball had all the GPs, they had all the West Coast GPs. So the
there were some Cascade Games ones, right?
But they used to team up. Too.
Yeah,
it would be like Cascade and Channel Fireball. Like I have mats with both.
Right. But yeah, I think that's generally one thing that, you know, this appeals to a different demographic, and I think that is worth the fact that this is a singular thing. The other things that kind of were talked about, so panels, limited, there was artists there, and so stuff that has happened at previous Grand Prix is like the artists do live drawings, right, where they do I know Tappy and Olivia, most of the cosplay friends that I have done this, where they'll pose and then six in costume, and then 6 artists will all, and their magic artists will all draw them, or paint them, and kind of do like on stage art while they're doing it, and that's always really cool and something to pay attention to.
I remember seeing on social media one time they did like a panel where Gavin was hosting it, I think, and then there was Steve Argyle, and they like designed, like the audience helped design a card. And then the artist like made art for the card.
Oh, sweet!
You didn't hear about this?
No, I didn't hear about that.
It was like sometime in the last year.
Got it.
Yeah. So like, you know, once you have artists and panels and like, you know, significant Magic personalities like Gavin all in the same place, you can start to combine some things.
Yeah, right. And then like you can also do like something that was at PTQs, and more often I feel like I saw them at Grand Prix before kind of the consolidation around Channel Fireball, was alterers, card alterers. Like this is the community for those people, because you have so many people that love customizing their deck, and like the main person who wants to customize their deck is a commander player, and so having artists there that aren't necessarily magic artists, but they're there to like paint on or draw on or take commissions from people that want, like, for instance, I have a tithe that looks like Luke walking into the sunset, seeing the 2 suns from Star Wars, because you can't get a foil tithe, but it's top 10 cards in my Geist commander deck that's all foil. So like, and that's probably on my top 5 favorite cards that I own. So like,
yeah. So I guess my only question is like, if you're going to bring legitimate magic artists in, altering is like a lot of what people want them to do. Do you think that having like fan artists coming in and alter people's cards undercuts the like so in a world where the artists are treated more like special guests, which I think they should be, right? Where they're like specially invited, they use their name to advertise the event, which they already do, even though they don't treat them that nice. Do you think that it kind of undercuts them to like bring in other people who are going to alter for cheaper because they're like not as well known of an artist?
No, I don't think so.
Oh, cool. Well, yeah, that's easy.
I think because they're being supported, like I think that that's less of an issue. There are other things you get from artists, and there is also a uniqueness to getting a card altered. Like me getting Kess altered by Izzy is more valuable to me than me getting Kess altered by a friend of mine that is very good at art.
And you're willing to just pay the premium.
Correct.
I mean, I guess it undercuts some artists who will like alter anybody's cards, but most of them will only touch their own cards anyway. So it's like, that's something that's special that can't be replicated. So it doesn't really matter if you have a rando do it.
And signatures are a totally separate thing that I want on cards from alters. So I think there's different incentives. Like I think that would be fine. I also think, and Inkling Customs was kind of doing this at this event, was just having tables where people can draw and make their own tokens. And she was like working with them and drawing tokens for people and doing that kind of thing. And she's done that at different events as well.
Fan artists getting like their own booth is a cool idea. It's tough for me to know where they should stand between vendor and artist, because like obviously they're not going, I mean, maybe they are, I don't know. Some fan artists have like kind of become popular enough. Maybe they are just like as much of a draw as a magic artist and they should be treated as such.
Sure.
Or should they be more like a vendor where you come, you hustle your own work? Like magic artists who are doing the art for the cards and whose names are like very obviously being used to advertise the event, I think they need to be treated like special guests. Yeah. Fan artists, it's hard for me to say. Maybe it's just a case-by-case basis, I guess.
And I think that has more to do with influencer following, right? Like if you were to sit someone who is a large followed magic alterist, like Proxy Guy, who like, and he's doing that kind of stuff at an event, I think he is more of a person to be invited versus, or like Inkling Customs, versus like just a really good artist but doesn't do magic art is kind of just like a person who in that community makes a living maybe doing alters, having a booth. And either one works for me. And even doing workshops on how to do that, like that's another thing is like
That would be a great panel.
I would love a panel on just like how to paint custom altars because I have this one Quest for the Holy Relic that I like tried painting each of the swords on, and it's bad. I still have it somewhere.
You should put it in Geist.
It was in Geist for a while. It lived there. That's why I did it because I was like, I'm gonna do this, and it's a card I don't care about, so I'll try. And it's too thick. The paint is globby.
Oh
so
yeah, I think having the right materials is more important than it seems like it would be, and also like something that requires kind of experience doing it. Mm-hmm. And then obviously technique is a thing as well, because painting on such a small thing is way different from painting on like a canvas or digitally or whatever, right?
Well, and you have more requirements, right? It has to be flat. It can't be if you want to shuffle.
I can see the merit to consolidating as many features into Magic Fest as possible because I kind of like going to these things and enjoying the full breadth that Magic has to offer me. I like... So at Magic Fest Vegas, I got a card signed by an artist, which I regret because it's a card with a weird text box and the signature's right over the text box. I bought some foils from vendors. I participated in a Battle Bond side event. I played in the main event Modern Horizons day 1 and 2. I played Commander in the command zone. I participated in a panel. I watched another panel. I like to be able to go and do all that stuff. And something where I can do all that stuff is so much more appealing to me than breaking it off into like, here is just a GP, and here is just a Command Fest, and here is just a Magic Vorthos art exhibit or whatever, right? And so, but I also see the merits where there are people who a Command Fest sounds more inviting to them as a player, and they're going to go to that. Even though they might have been able to have a similar experience at a Magic Fest, it's not the same. So... like it's tough for me, and I mean maybe the solution is that like if other TOs can step up and do this stuff, right, with some support from Wizards. Right. So like SCG and Pastimes are not allowed to run Magic Fests, but they can run Command Fests. And maybe if there were other special events that Wizards was coming up with that didn't necessarily end in a Pro Tour invite, maybe those would be able to be given to other tournament organizers worldwide, right? Like if they were like, anybody worldwide who wants to run one of these things, hit us up, and you can start having these in South America, Europe, Asia, wherever, right?
Well, and like look at SCG Con, right? Like SCG is already doing that. They've created their own convention that is about Magic.
And it doesn't give any Pro Tour invites, but it's just, and there's a competitive component to it as well.
Does it give Pro Tour invites now? That's a whole other conversation.
So they did announce earlier this year that they would start giving Pro Tour invites to Star
Top
City
NSCG.
Games and Bazaar de Bagda, and with more potentially to follow. And then like DreamHack is running an arena tournament that I suspect will have some amount of big Wizard support because they love when like big existing TOs outside of Magic promote their game. But yeah, I mean, I guess I'm thinking more on. I guess SCG Con is more what I'm thinking, right? Because like there are already other tournament series that exist, right? Like Nerd Rage Games has their like Midwestern tournament series, and Star City has their like opens that feed the invitationals, Players Championship, all that stuff. But like SCG Con is the closest thing to a Magic Fest that has ever existed outside of a Magic Fest, right?
Yeah, excluding like Gen Con or like other big, which aren't Magic focused.
No, they're not. Not at all. I mean, I don't think that that's the same thing at all.
Sure.
It has many of the same aspects, but like...
so I guess that kind of segues...
But I think what Wizards could do is like support companies that want to make SCG cons, right? Like SCG was only able to do that because they have this huge, robust tournament series that was supporting all of it, so they could like branch out and do something that like is a little bit more casual focused, as well as like has competitive elements.
Right. Well, I think that's kind of what the Commander Fest model is, right? It's giving that an opening. Commander is the most played version of Magic, other than maybe like digital games, because there are so many of those played in an hour versus that can be played in real life.
Number of players also. It's just very convenient to sit down on your computer and play, right? Rather than traveling out,
going to a store,
driving hours to a Magic Fest, which is what a lot of people do. I mean, I think flying to Magic Fest is like a very small sliver, but driving 2 or 3 hours, some people are willing to do it and some people aren't.
Even casual stores, like more Commander is being played by people than Standard or Modern or Limited even. And so
Standard is iffy though, right? I mean, with Arena,
Like,
do you think,
excluding digital content on paper.
in paper, yes, agreed, in paper.
And that means that there's a willingness to have these type of events and making those events a little bit more appealing for people that don't want to play Commander. So having, for those limited people, cool, wacky, limited stuff. Like, Ben would go to every single one of these if there was like a focus on chaos drafting, right? Like
Chaos Draft Fest.
Well, but like, I don't think that needs to be a thing, but I think CommandFest having that attachment is fine.
So you were saying that like a lot of people, this was their first fest they'd ever been to. And there's a reason why they didn't go to Magic Fest. And I'm guessing it's because they thought it was more competitive focused. But no matter what you put at a Command Fest, people are going to, because of the branding, people are going to be like, oh, well, that's for Commander players, right?
Sure.
So even if you love Chaos Drafts and you can go and just play, 3 continuous days of Chaos Draft and have a great time, it's like the way that it's branded, right? And that's the reason that I like the branding of Magic Fest. And I don't think it's there yet, right? Because people still think of Magic Fest as GPs. But I think that something like SCG Con really, like, it says what it is, right? Mm-hmm. It's a convention for all of Magic, right? I mean, I guess Magic Con would be better, but Magic Fest is doing that, right?
Sure.
Magic Fest, the branding is ostensibly that all of Magic is here and it's a celebration of all of it. And I think that they've now started to achieve that, especially with the Command Zone and panels and everything else that they've started doing recently. And I want more of that. And I don't want Magic Fests to primarily be GPs. I want them to be Magic conventions.
Well, so that's a whole other conversation, right? And that was kind of where I wanted to segue to is, what is the future of Magic Fests? Where you mentioned at the beginning of the cast, and I think it was post the music. Magic Fest Oklahoma City was the lowest attended GP in 10 years.
I heard that only 62 people made day 2.
And it pays out to 64.
Pay out to 64. Yeah, they're like people who didn't make day 2 who are like entitled to prize money, which is like really not where you want to be at, right? I mean, usually you want like hundreds of people making day 2 and you have to fight for your cash, right?
And so,
and that also is 2 weeks before Christmas, and Portland is going to be the week before Christmas this weekend. So like, there's that, right? Like a lot of people already have money tied up in travel or buying gifts or whatever, and so it's just not a great time to be running a Magic Fest. So I don't know if Oklahoma City or even Portland reflects on like 2020 worth of Magic Fest.
Correct. And I think there's different layers, right? Standard has been tumultuous this year, just in general.
I think that means fewer people with paper
Standard decks that exist
because their deck got banned or they never wanted to play because it seemed crappy and they never picked it back up. Because that's the thing is, like, you build a standard deck when a set comes out,
right?
Most of the time, unless you're competitive and you want to keep up with the meta, you're like, oh, Eldraine came out, Feasting Troll King looks dope, I'm going to build a Feasting Troll King deck. And that's basically what you did online rather than in paper.
Yeah.
But like people who want to play paper, that's what they would do. And then they're like, oh, standard sucks, I'm going to sell my cards. They're not going to buy them again once Oko gets banned. They're going to wait.
Yeah, they're just going to wait till the next set because then they'll buy new cards. And so... And we are in a little bit of a lame duck standard, right? Literally, cards are previewing from Theros Beyond Death, and there's a whole conversation about that we'll be having next week with our preview card. Technically, in 2 weeks, we're not having an episode next week.
Yes, because Tuesday, the day we usually stream, is Christmas Eve.
Yes, I'll be cooking a brisket.
So what day are we doing the preview card episode?
Monday.
Yeah, so the 29th?
Different than our normally scheduled.
It's the 30th.
The 30th. So announcement, our preview card is on the 30th. It'll happen at noon.
Nice.
We might do it a little bit earlier at 11. We'll keep people posted. Pay attention to Twitter. But
I will be on an airplane.
I would be paying attention at 11 a.m. on Monday, getting ready for our preview card. We're excited. Back to kind of Magic Fest. With SCG feeding into the MPL, or feeding into Mythic
Players
Tours. Feeding in the Players Tours, keeping all these things straight. And with PTQs being back, and with Magic Fest becoming more convention focused and less kind of regional large tournament focused, should there be as many of them? Should they reduce the number of them, focusing more on high quality, larger ones than quantity? And yeah.
I think that's tough.
Sure.
So like, for one thing, like they're already cutting them in like a lot of underserved areas. Like there's like one Magic Fest scheduled or something in South America next
Sure.
year, which is like egregious based on the number of Magic
Yes,
players there.
yes.
And like
that's
the
a
Asia
different
Pacific
issue,
region, like Asia and Australia and the Philippines and all that area. Those are like super underserved based on the number of players that are there for GPs next year. Not as bad as Latin America, but so like if you cut Magic Fests, you are like, I would want to see some restored to those places, right? And that's the other thing is like a lot of people are willing to drive to these things but not fly. So like if you get an Oklahoma City every couple of years, that's great if you live in like that area, right?
Sure.
In like Oklahoma, Texas, Mississippi type area, like you can just drive to Oklahoma and go to your GP. But if you only focus them in like major US cities,
Oklahoma's nowhere near Mississippi, but keep going.
what's the one? Arkansas.
That's Arkansas.
I forgot Arkansas existed.
That's weird.
Well, I just forgot where it was.
It's like Alabama, Arkansas, Tennessee, and Mississippi
in
are,
Arkansas,
and
like
Louisiana are like the deep
you know
south.
what I'm talking about, right? Like
Oklahoma's
that
like
area.
north.
But like if you're in that area, right, and like you only are like going to a Magic Fest if you want to drive like 5 hours to Dallas, but there's one every year, it's like, oh, that kind of is maybe not.
Right. Well,
So
something that some people brought up is also one of the reasons Oklahoma City was such a low attendance is Oklahoma City is not a hub.
Right.
Airport. Like it is hard to get to Oklahoma City, and they jack up the prices literally starting last weekend when it's holiday season. So people are flying back for the holidays. So your ticket goes from, if you plan it correctly, $250 to $800.
Yeah. I mean, like, I think having like the competitive scene super tied to like these weird small tournaments in Oklahoma City is not the way to go. But should there be a Magic convention in Oklahoma City, maybe every couple of years? I think that's fine.
I agree with that.
I think like if the TO, and it doesn't have to be Channel Fireball, because I think that we're talking about more casual focused events in this episode where we're branching out from Channel Fireball. But whoever the TO is for whatever this Magic Con in whatever we call it, Magic Fest, SCG Con, whatever, is if your expectations are what they are for Oklahoma City, then you can just, staff it a little lower and have realistic expectations and have like a fun little event, right? And it doesn't have to be like a huge blowout every time. I don't know. I mean, I guess I don't know the best, like how these resources get allocated for these conventions, but I don't know that fewer is better. I just think it's like a refocusing away from competitive play because like competitive play a lot of the time, and Saffron Olive had a great article about this week, where he was talking about like the focus of competitive Magic is now on digital and esports. And like, if you look at kind of the ways to qualify, like there's a lot more of them focused on digital play.
Sure.
And Standard in particular is focused on digital play. And Standard is like low attendance in paper, and like there's not a lot of Standard events.
Right. My Standard play, I mean, not that I played a lot of Standard before Arena existed, but in fact, I played more Standard since Arena existed, but almost every single dollar I've spent on a Standard card is on Arena.
Yeah,
like I put all my it's the same incentives to put it there versus in paper, and I'm gonna play it more.
So I think it means like you want to refocus paper around the strengths that paper can offer, and this is what Saffron Olive said in his article, and that's the gathering, right? It's like you can play Magic on your computer, but you can't have the gathering. And in defense of that, I had one of the greatest times this weekend. Of the year. Yeah. And I went to Africa this year. And that was because hanging out with people in real life at a paper event is not replaceable by a digital content experience. Yeah. So I think that you just want to kind of refocus paper events on like not necessarily exclusively casual play, but like not every paper event needs to be centered around a competitive tournament.
Sure.
And this CommandFest is proof of that. But I think that like maybe we need less GPs, but the same number or more Magic Fests is what I'm saying, right? Like Magic Fest doesn't need to have a GP at it, in my opinion. Sure. And I think that there should be more Magic Fest or Magic Fest type events. And there can be competitive play there for cash prizes. Right. And there can even be, but like once you get like the Pro Tour invites and Pro Points and all that type of stuff, like it changes the focus of the event to that.
And I mean, we're a Modern podcast talking about the strengths of paper. Modern is one of those strengths, right? Modern, Pioneer, Legacy. No one's ever going to play a vintage GP. And it's pretty consistent that the Legacy, I think the last GP that was Legacy was Bologna, which I'm never going to say correctly.
I think that was correct.
Yeah, cool. I got it right, everybody. And it had huge attendance numbers. They sold out ×2. And so when GPs are paper focused events that you can't really get from Arena, or they're unique ones, like Modern events, if you look at the event attendance on Modern events versus standard ones, are always significantly higher. But that's partially because that's the main way you get to play it, right? That's the main way you could qualify for a PT in Modern, is by paying paper. And so leaning into Commander, leaning into Modern, leaning into, Limited is, I think, a really smart way to capitalize on live events.
Right. And I think that if you want to, especially with Arena, if you're a standard player and you want to qualify for larger tournaments and become a pro player, or, just you are a more competitive focused player who's just having a good time, whatever your goal is, you're probably just going to be doing it on Arena, right? Right. That's the easiest way to qualify for stuff playing standard.
Yeah.
But if you are a Modern player or a Commander player and you just, I guess if you're a Modern player or a Pioneer player and you want to qualify, you have to play paper. And so that is one place to focus Magic Fests, and particularly GPs. But I think another place is all the casuals, right? Yeah. All the Commander players, all the people who just want to get their cards altered and play 60 card casual or whatever, or they play standard, but they have a rat tribal deck, or whatever it is, right? Focusing events on those people and on Modern, Pioneer, Legacy, I think is should be where Magic Fest look in the future.
Yeah, I agree.
And Command Fest is a step in the right direction. But again, I think that having it so focused makes it, maybe it's selfish and it appeals less to me personally, and that's not the case. But
I think if there was a Command Fest in Los Angeles, or even Los Angeles adjacent things like San Diego.
Yeah, of course I would go because I could drive. But I'm thinking more about I'd probably still go to Vegas. I don't know. I guess I never fly to GPs anyway, so it's not a big deal.
Right, how many GPs are you flying to?
I guess I would still go, but I would want there to be a little more to it.
And I feel for instance, that if there was a Command Fest in San Francisco, which is a place that I wouldn't go to a GP for, and have not, Santa Clarita, which you have gone, I guess, because you've driven.
I've been to Oakland and Santa Clara.
What's the closest thing you've not gone to? Dallas? The hub? Texas?
No, I haven't been to various Phoenixes. Wait. Closest place that I've never been to for a GP that runs GPs?
Yeah. Where's a place that if it was close, Denver, maybe what's LA's West Coast?
I've been to a GP in Denver.
Six cities.
I've been to a GP in Denver, Albuquerque, Phoenix. I drove to all of them. I didn't drive to Denver.
So what's the farthest you would fly to go to a Command Fest?
I don't know. I don't
Seattle?
fly. I never fly.
I guess you didn't go to Seattle, but you maybe wouldn't have gone. You don't fly to GPs. You just have to drive.
I just never fly to GPs. I did actually really want to go to Seattle because I have friends there. But.
Yeah. So see. If it was a well-timed moment,
I'm not saying I wouldn't go to a Command Fest.
Yeah.
It's just not what I would prefer. Okay, so what if there was a Modern Fest? Command Fest only works because Commander is the most popular format. I think Modern Fest would be, as much as I like Modern and this podcast about Modern, I think it would not be successful.
I agree.
I think that you want that diversity.
Would be obligated
I would go. Well, I would enjoy that.
Yeah.
But again, I think I would enjoy it more if there were side events where I could draft, where I could play the Modern main event and then take a break and get some Eldraine and then play a game of Commander and hop back into a Modern side event.
And we'd play, and everyone would end up just playing Commander at some extent at that event. Not everyone, but Commander would be played at that event regardless. That's the one thing that's true of all of these things. And what was ridiculous about not having command zones was Commander is the casual way people play, and so when you're between events, you play Commander, right?
Yeah.
Or many players play Commander, and it's kind of the great.
Oh, it's not. Yeah, it takes a long time. Is
Correct.
The one reason that it's maybe not the best.
But you scrub out another event, schedule, or you because sometimes part of Magic the Gathering is hanging out with people.
I just think playing the same format over and over and over and over, I need to reset.
Which and I think that is true of most people. That was definitely we would leave, the event was from 10 a.m. to 9 p.m. We would leave at 5 and then not come back. We'd go get dinner and then go hang out. And if there was more of a variety of things to do, I would have been more willing to order food into the convention hall and then just kind of do other things. But, you know, once you
and I remember that in Vegas, we kind of did do that where we like went to go get food. We like played Commander or whatever on Friday. And then we like went to go get food. And then we came back and like watched a live paint. And then we like...
Yeah,
or something like that, right?
And we like did stuff, and then we went to the commander party, and that's something that I think they can definitely do a better job. I guess that's one other comment. The VIP party events need to get more of an identity in general. This one was definitely weird. Like, it's meant to be, I think, what you were talking about of like a place to meet content creators, but the event was like the content creators hung out in one section and then people played commander games friends, on tables because they're all friends.
You go to GPs together all the time and like...
So I think there just needs to be a little bit more of an idea. And Vegas did a really good job, right? Because it was kind of the release event for...
When they did a panel at the commander party too. They did a panel at the commander party that had, Jimmy and Josh, Glenn...
Gavin?
Maybe. I don't know. I mean, there were tons of people there. But yeah I mean... So they added a little value to the VIP party.
Right.
Because especially in CommandFest and at Command Zones, a lot of the content creators you like are there and you can just talk to them. I mean, the one thing that you can do with a VIP party is you can, even then, I mean, you can, depending on the timing, you can feature pro players a little bit more because they're harder to interact with, right?
Sure.
Because pro players are in the event playing, right? So like if you really want to meet Reed Duke or whatever, it's like he's playing.
Right.
Don't bother him, right? If he could do a panel Friday night beforehand, then that would be cool, like a cool way to kind of hang with Reed Duke a little bit, do a Q&A, and then he goes and plays in the event tomorrow and you don't have to, you know.
And I think from that maybe was the weirder thing on this one is that so much of the entire event was just hanging out with content creators that the VIP party didn't feel like anything different from that other than like some people got dressed up and there was beer. So I think that, but I'm interested to see where all of this kind of convention kind of space goes. I've been on the train for 5 years now that if not longer, basically since GP Vegas 1, that GP should be more conventions than anything else. And that the more they lean into that, the better. And I think that Wizards is doing that. And it's really kind of exciting and is the one big hope I have for kind of paper Magic and the decisions they're making in that process. I do think the one thing I miss from all of this is that there's not as much coverage for these events. And I think that especially if you're doing panels and if you're going to look at that, live streaming those panels is a thing you should just do.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, again, a lot of Magic events are framed as a tournament that has things attached to it. And I think if you frame them in your mind as a convention, you think about what other conventions do, right?
Yeah.
Like if you think of not even like San Diego Comic-Con or anything, right? But even smaller Comic-Cons stream their panels on Twitch or YouTube or
the smaller
on their website.
The smaller the convention, the more likely they are to stream it. Because like at Comic-Con, some of it's like it's exclusive to get the Hall
That's what I mean
H.
is like Comic-Con is like such a different beast that I'm not even going there, right? But like if you think about, you know, Gen Con, which is still bigger than any Magic Fest, but like they're streaming all their panels, or like smaller Comic-Cons are streaming all their panels a lot of the time. Like just do that, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and like event coverage is often focused on tournaments, and I think that's good because like tournaments are more fun to watch than just like casual Commander for the most part. But yeah, you can stream the panels and it doesn't have to be crazy high quality with commentators or anything. Like it can just be what we have here and you could stream a panel, right? I mean,
from like a quality perspective, yeah, you could very quickly just have a camera that plugs into OBS and then live stream it, and like they are already doing the work for the panel at the panel. That like not even that much more effort other than an internet connection that I don't know what the
And if Wizards thinks it's too low quality to put on their Twitch stream, fine, put it on CFBs, put it on Pastimes, put it on whoever's, right? I mean, like it's cool, people will watch it and it'll like give you like a sense that you're there. But I do think
one of the best things about Magic over the last couple of years is that content creation is expanding past just gameplay, right? You have stuff or past just like tournament play where you have stuff like game nights, or you have stuff like Ristic Studies where he's doing essays, or Spice 8 Racks essays, or the debate shows on Tolarian Community College or Tolarian Academy. Tolarian Community College. Yeah, I was right the first time. I'm
Player
good.
Academy is the card.
Yeah,
That's gameplay. Can't talk about that.
You have cosplayers. You have us just talking into the void.
We talk about gameplay most of the time, to be fair.
Yeah, but we're not playing games.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
So I think
For a long time, all of what would be showing up on a Channel Fireball stream, or most of it, is gameplay, right?
But I don't want to get it twisted. I think that we could stream more gameplay as well. I mean,
Correct.
SCG is doing great at all of their events, and there's just no GP coverage. And I think one of the things about GPs that people think is really cool that's like undervalued is like you go to a GP, if you do really well, you're going to win $200 or whatever. That's cool, I guess. But like you might be undefeated. You might get in a feature match. You might like... You know, your friends can watch you. Like I when I worked at a shop, we had like a good number of players who were going out to GPs and traveling and like starting to see some success. And we would turn on and watch every GP hoping that they would show up on the screen. And when they showed up on the screen, everybody playing in our like Sunday Modern event would be super hyped, right? Like it was an experience that you can't get anywhere else.
Yeah. I think that there's also like that's a loss. For instance, pretty much the only reason I would play in a modern GP is the potential to show up on camera, right? Like that's really the value to me. I don't have a chance of winning, likely, but and the original reason I used to want to play in them is for that opportunity, right? It's I come up with a cool deck idea. Can I get a deck tech where someone interviews me? Can I get onto the camera stream in a feature match? And the best experiences watching GPs for me this year was when Ben got on camera, right?
Yeah.
Was getting a chance to watch Ben both times against elves play a deck and see the chat kind of both ragging on him for mistakes he made and also cheering him on. And like I pay more attention to that than like any sporting event I've ever paid attention to in my life.
That's a really cool experience. And it doesn't draw widespread viewership when like Ben is on camera. I mean, obviously the podcast has a following, but it's just cool to see your friends or like people that you feel an affinity with on camera, right?
Well, and if Ben's a bad example because they do think actually Ben being on camera does draw viewership.
Like our friend Michael Hughes,
correct.
Right? When he top 8 at a GP, we got to like watch him playing in the top 8, and that was awesome. And like you can't, you know,
that doesn't exist as much anymore.
That's not something
really
that you see in the metrics and you're like, oh, well, people are attending because they might be on camera and their friends can watch them, or people are watching because they want to see their friend who's doing well. Like that's so nebulous you can't quantify it, but it's like a real part of GPs, right? Just being an open tournament with video coverage.
Oh, and like there's a lot of comments on also demographic issues, right? Where like especially for a while the MPL was all guys.
Yeah.
And not having tournament coverage at GPs where a lot of the ability to be on camera or be featured is more merit-based, or at least more likely to feature non-MPL members, and that means there's a chance for women to be featured or non-binary people to be featured.
I think a lot of women were inspired to like become more competitive because they saw women in feature matches like killing it, like, you know, EXO at a draft GP on day 2, and they're like, wow, this is amazing. Right.
And so like by removing that feature, you're now losing some of that strength. And I think that's as much as I love the Magic Fests part of what's happening, I am sad that the coverage of Paper Magic has taken that back seat, and I would want someone like SEG or Channel, and SEG does this, right? That's one of the reasons I like that SEG got CommandFest and that I like what they're doing with their circuit is
and
that
SEG-Con, I think SEG-Con's a great idea, and I would like to go to one, except that it's really far away.
Big thank you to everyone on the live chat. If you are watching on YouTube, before you leave, hit the like button. That like button is so important. There's like a thumbs up. Don't hit the thumbs down. Hit the thumbs up. After that, make sure to subscribe if you're not subscribed. On Twitch, please follow. Obviously, we can't do subscribers yet, but if you want to go to my channel, twitch.tv/Kesko, you can get a soup emoji if you become a subscriber. This is your chance.
Baby Yoda drinking
It's Baby
soup.
Yoda.
Baby Yoda, I think, is significantly more important
than the soup. I'm telling people you said that.
You don't slander me in my soup fandom.
In fact, if I'm going to go to Twitch right now and throw some baby Yoda soup emojis all over the place. Man,
so let us know what you think. I would love to hear other people's ideas for the future of paper play, because I don't think that I have it figured out. You know, like I kind of have ideas about what I think would be cool, but yeah, I mean, I don't know where pay per play is going to go, but I think that if it stays the same, that's not good. I think that it can be a lot better. So
yeah. Final shout outs. Patreon's really important. Thank you guys for all the people that support our Patreon. We really couldn't do it without you guys. There is cool tiers. You get the raw feed. You'll get all of this content there. Like all the unedited version of this video. You get the ability to get our lifelinker code. You get shout outs. You get free stuff if you're donating $30 a month, which is the top tier.
We'll take a look at a deck.
Yeah.
And on stream, you guys may have seen us do that. If you send us a deck list, we'll take a look and give our critiques and do a little deck tech.
Any $10 vendor gets, any $10 patron gets a deck tech live on camera during the live stream and is often in the episode because we generally don't let free content disappear. Also, make sure to tune in every Monday for hot takes. Make sure to tune in every Tuesday for the live stream. Make sure to tune in Wednesday if you have an iTunes account and want to listen to this audio only. And Thursday for the main edited video with card art and high quality editing. Thank you to Marshall James, who does all of that editing. Thank you, Michael, for joining us on the cast as always. And thank you,
anytime,
Ben Bateman, for ditching us for Star Wars. What a nerd. And thank you everyone at CommandFest DC. You guys are amazing. We had such a great time. And if Gavin is watching this, we all really need a Yeti commander. It's about time. What am I going to do with all these Yetis? Bye, guys.
This has been a production of Time Traveler Media, sending podcasts into the future.